Well, like on cue, Joe Biden gave a speech today on the one-year anniversary of the PACT Act, the promise to address comprehensive toxics acts for all the burn pits. And he was taking a victory lap.
1 year ago today, we met that sacred obligation when I signed, after fighting so damn hard, for the PACT Act. The PACT Act is one of the most significant laws ever signed to help veterans exposed to toxic materials and help their families recover, as well as receive compensation.
He didn't fight for that. This is smoke and mirrors. Yeah, yes. Look, this act does do definitive good. Like I'm partial to this burn pit thing. I was there in Iraq when it happened, but for Democrats to tout this as some sort of moral victory, especially as they tried to pin this, any opposition on it, on Republicans, it's disgraceful. And I'm going to explain this to you. It goes to the actual intentions of Democrats, though. If you recall, during the debate leading up to this bill, Republicans opposed it. Not because it wasn't a worthy cause, but because Democrats tied all kinds of other ridiculous spending to it. The money allocated in this bill 1 year ago for veterans was $277 billion. But the Democrats attached, without debate, mind you, another $400 billion for their slush fund for totally unrelated things, not even remotely related to veterans. And then former Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey, thankfully, was vocal about it.
And here's the problem. Completely unrelated to the $280 billion of new spending, there is a mechanism created in this bill. It's a budgetary gimmick that has the intent of making it possible to have a huge explosion in unrelated spending, $400 billion. This budgetary gimmick is so unrelated to the actual veterans issue that has to do with burn pits that it's not even in the House version of this bill.
$277 billion for this initiative. And the Democrats wanted another $390 billion in totally new unrelated spending. Why couldn't they just pass this in a single bill? That, I would have applauded them for that. My service didn't come with any stipulations, so why should the care for the injuries we may have received during our service have any either? But the Democrats always do this. Then they do exactly what Biden did today. They talk about how good they did. This is shameful. Not as shameful as Biden telling the parents of the fallen Marine recently, my wife Jill and I know how you feel. We lost our son and brought him home in a flag-draped coffin. Not true, didn't happen. His son Beau died of cancer in America. Still tragic, but to lie about it to score cheap political points is stolen valor. Just like Dick Blumenthal said he served in Vietnam. He did not. But this is just indicative of why the VA is such trash. The people who run it, the people who fund it, and the people who oversee it, they don't care. They don't get their health care there. And this was proven during the waitlist scandal a few years ago, where thousands of veterans died on waitlists waiting for care. And when officials found out about it, they tried to cover it up until it reached critical mass, and then they couldn't anymore. Why? Because the government is bad at nearly everything it gets involved in. I'm so tired of hearing people talk about how good the VA is. I know. I was at the VA on Tuesday for my screening for this exposure to burn pits under the PACT Act. By the way, this was posted on the front door when I walked in. A D rating for energy efficiency. So let me get this straight. This government wants to take away my gas stove and car, but will contract out services to our soldiers to a facility that gets a D rating in energy efficiency. You see the problem here? This is the reasoning I'm talking about. Oh, by the way, you know how and why they made me drive an hour to go to this specific facility and could not be seen by, I don't know, my doctor or even one in the surrounding 5 towns of me? Because this one was the cheapest. It's not the best. It was not the fastest. It was not the most reliable. It was the cheapest. I almost got hit by a falling ceiling tile when I walked in, too. So no, Joe Biden, I don't give you any credit for veterans. It's unbelievable. Oh, by the way, how did I get that appointment? This is even better. I was contacted by a company called QTC. What the heck is that? Real good question. QTC was actually awarded a $6.8 billion contract for disability compensation exams for vets in 2017. It's been renewed since then, and they've been screwing it up ever since. How did they get that contract? Well, it's certainly not on the merits. since they were previously sued for failing to properly evaluate Vietnam veterans suffering from the effects of Agent Orange. It was former VA Secretary turned lobbyist Anthony Principe, who, by the way, used to run the company before serving as the VA Secretary, too. It's all a web. Weird. They got a $6.8 billion contract in seemingly no-bid style. But now, if you need a disability evaluation, you're not allowed to speak to the VA directly. Well, that was at least according to the many QTC operators I spoke with while trying to schedule a basic appointment. Look, if you are a veteran seeking any appointments, help, or anything else from the VA, they will send you a nice text message informing you where and when your appointment is, without consulting you, by the way. And if that appointment happens to be 100 miles away next Tuesday in the middle of the workday, too bad. You have to call them back. You have to wait on hold, then try to reschedule it or forfeit your rights to benefits altogether. Seems great for the veteran. Really, we're really serving you guys. Thanks. And when you call your doctor, you have to ask, this is anybody at home. You've primary care physician. Hey, Dr. Mike, when do you have any availability? Oh, these are the dates I'm available. Right. Okay, cool. You can't do that with QTC. You have to tell them when you might be available. And if they don't like those hours or availability, they're just going to assign you an appointment outside of them anyway. Folks, this is government health care. Get this through your skulls. For Democrats out there who just want to impose this Medicare for all. It's run by insiders and former officials who are getting rich with our tax dollars that should be going to actual care and not D-rated buildings. Another fascinating fact about the VA, and here's from the NIH website itself. Quote, there are partnerships between the VA and 90% of U.S. medical schools. More than 70% of all U.S. practicing physicians trained at a VA facility at some time. Currently, the VA has more than 40 different healthcare and professional training programs under its auspices. More than 70% of doctors train at the VA? Why? What can't you do as a patient of the VA? Sue. Thanks a lot, U.S. government, for using me and my fellow service members as guinea pigs, and not to mention political pawns. Oh, also, you will likely never see the same doctor again either at the VA. The VA can deny this, but in my 100+ required visits to the VA or VA facilities in the last 10 years since I left the military, I personally can say I have never seen the same doctor twice, even for the same condition. Look, I could go on for hours about the problems, just specific to me, not to mention what people write into us. I have private health insurance, too. Imagine those who don't. Veterans issues sound great in election years, but are almost always used as a Trojan horse for mostly Democrats to jam through massive amendment spending that doesn't help veterans at all. And they hide behind our service. Sure, this did do a lot of good for vets, but at what cost? And I always say, we can do a lot better for those willing to die for this country. Well, joining me now to discuss